Hey guys, what's up? It's Maya and welcome back to my crib. Today I'm going to be showing you all how I make vocal chops in Logic Pro. That's literally the intro. Actually, there is one important thing. My single, Take Me to Your Place, my new single, is out now. So you should stream it because I'm very proud of it and it's definitely cool. So, alright, let's get into the video. Okay, here I am at my desk and I got Logic up on the screen here. And I'm going to show you exactly how I put this together. So first I have a little demo that I created and then I'm going to go step by step through exactly what I did to make them the way they are and try to recreate them. It might not be exactly the same because the thing about vocal chops is that kind of like depending on, you always get a little bit of a different thing, and I think that's kind of the charm of it, the way that I'm doing it at least. It's hard to get the same exact outcome every time, but you can make it pretty similar. So let's talk about what I did. I have a beat in the background that I made, literally with Apple loops. So don't worry about the beat. The beat is interesting, but let's listen to this. So, as you can see in this, let's talk about what's in the session first. The first track here is the original vocal that I used. The vocal actually comes from the new song I was talking about, so it sounds nothing like the track at all, but that's where I got that vocal from. I got it from the original vocal track that I used, dry but tuned. That's an important element. You don't need to have a tuned vocal, but that's what I used, something that I had tuned already in Melodyne. The second track is the vocal chops, and we're going to talk about how I made this, but here I have a folder. They call it a track stack in Logic, and then I have these these four. I actually didn't use this one, I think. This I one, but I named them as the vowel, and I'll talk more about that. So this is what they call a drum machine designer sort of stack here that they made. Then I have these green ones, which are backing track, which are just Apple loops that I pulled in randomly and renamed so that you didn't know which Apple loop they were, which you can easily figure out because I did absolutely nothing to them. I just put them in and stacked them. But okay, let's talk about this. So let's listen to the original vocal that I had here. And as you can see, it's already chopped up. And I kept it chopped up for a reason, to make it easier for me to find the part that I had used in the example, but you know, I just dragged it in literally from the folder from Take Me to Your Place, which was the song that it was from. So let's just listen to that from here because that's where I chopped it up. But baby, you got me in my head. So as you can hear, it's a dry vocal, there's no reverb. It's just tuned in Melodyne. I don't know who to call when I'm thinking about you. It's all that I can do. Okay, so then what I did is, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to close this and just mute it. Actually, I'm turning on track header components, I'm turning on, off, on, so I can power this off. And I'm going to put it up here just so that it's up there. I don't really know. And then I'm going to turn the backing track, fold the backing track and put it above the original vocal also. But assuming that you have your backing track together, you have something in your session already, that's what this backing track is going to signify. So, what I want to show you is that this original vocal, I actually totally forget what key it is in. I know from doing this that it could be in C sharp, but I don't even know. So, as you hear, it's in a completely different key. Disgusting, like why would anyone want that? But when I turn it off, the backing track, you can hear what the beginning part is. But the backing track's in a different key. Yeah, so that's interesting. But what I did first is I knew that this, since I was using Apple loops, which anyone who doesn't stand Apple loops, I'm judging you because Apple loops are incredible. Thank you, Apple, for making it easier for us to make songs by creating Apple loops. So up here, just to talk about this section for a second, I have created a custom header display here by pressing custom, by clicking this little drop down. I think it starts as Beats in Project if you're a new Logic user, which still has all the things you need. I use custom because I like to see the time code and I like to see everything with the MIDI and CPU meters. But what I wanted to point out here is that I have this thing to set my key. And this is one thing I love about Logic, and it's partly just because of the Apple loops, but also for transposition and stuff. You can set your key signature, which can be helpful for a couple things that Logic does. But for this specific example, I think it's just helpful. I always set my key, unless it changes keys. Then you can actually set the key signature under global tracks up here, but as it changes. But for me, it's helpful because if I ever open a project, or if I ever am using a project and I forget what key it's in, I can like quickly open the Logic session and just be like, oh right, that's in C major. Like if I'm making a lead sheet or something, I don't have to like figure it out because I made it so long ago that I forget. So yeah, and then, I don't know, that was just a random side note. And then this is in 120. But the key being up here, the note is actually important that this song is in C major. And that's going to help us later when we're making our vocal chops to just like remember what key it is in. Like always know what you're doing, what key you're in. That's kind of just something you should know as a musician. Anyway, so let's talk about this. So I have this vocal, I'm soloing it. And I wanted to take some chops from it, right? So I was like I was listening to the vocal, and I know that because this is my own song, I knew that in the chorus there's more elongated vowels. So things that don't have consonants and don't have like closes on the vowels. Like if I was saying, I remember feeling like a mess, there's a lot of consonants, there's a lot of words there, but in the chorus, which is I don't know who to call when I just didn't even sing my own song right, but that was not the melody of my song. I don't know who, there's a lot of more extended vowels as opposed to I remember feeling like a mess. So, you know, it depends on your style of your vocals, but I like to stick with things that are very vowel-y and very not have a lot of consonants in them. So this is the part that I kind of stuck with right here.
But baby, you got me in my head.
So I took from that section, and I also took from this section.
When I'm thinking about you, it's all that I can do.
So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these other parts because I am not using them. And I'm just going to slide this over because I know that this was the section of the vocal that I wanted to use. Now you can totally record it into a mic, and that honestly might be easier because you're in the key of the song, most likely if you're singing along to the track. But I think sometimes you just want to make a quick vocal chop. It's cool to just like, it boosts creativity to just kind of throw a vocal and see what you can do with it. So now I have this part here.
But baby, you got me in my head.
And then I have this section.
I don't know who to call when I'm...
And that's all I use. And you can see there's actually a click here at the end because I cut it off. But we're going to fix that later. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to press I for inspector. And now I have the inspector pops up on the left here. And I'm going to create a new software instrument track. I am very pedantic about coloring the track correctly, so I'm going to do my little self-created key command that I made and assign this track to be that same purple that I made the other vocal chop. And I'm going to assign the icon to be this, but I actually think it changes it once you put it into a drum machine. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So then in the inspector over here, I'm going to go and I'm going to create a drum machine designer as the instrument. And now it did crazy stuff. So I don't want this anymore. Just get rid of console. So when I did drum machine designer, it filled it in for me. I hate this. It makes me really freaking angry, but it filled in a preset for me. So it opened the browser already. So I'm going to close the browser and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go clear all pads. So now they're all completely empty. And then also Drum Machine Designer is stupid, and this is something I hate about Logic. It's filled in all of these plugins for me already. So I'm just gonna go no plugin for all of these. I know that's so irritating. I didn't set a user default for this, which is something I should do because it's not on my laptop. I did. But now I've deleted all the plugins off of the channel strip, and so right now all I have is this Drum Machine Designer that has completely empty spots. Like if I click any of these, nothing happens. If you're not familiar with Drum Machine Designer, basically what it does is it creates a track stack in Logic, and it assigns, it's actually really cool. It does this routing thing where wow, this one has a lot. It created it automatically created a kit for me because it goes to the user default. But as you can see, when I pop down this preset that it had was called Big Room, but I'm going to rename this Foxtrops. But when I click down the folder, it's got all of these areas inside of it. It's got all of these tracks inside of it. And basically what's cool about it is it routes them so that each individual one has a quick sampler that acts a certain way when that track is selected, but all of them are routed through Voxchops or through your drum kit designer or drum machine designer. So you can apply individual effects to each track or each part of the kit, but you can also apply effects to the entire folder or the entire stack. But the routing is cool so that if I wanted to create MIDI notes in each of these individual MIDI tracks here, or software instrument tracks, I could, but I can also just create one MIDI like piano roll region that triggers all of them. So you'll see more what I mean about what I mean once I actually do it, but since it's annoying, I'm just going to delete all of these that are inside of there. Oh, it deleted the whole thing. Stupid. So I'm going to delete all of them except one to make it easier. And now all I have is this sidechain trigger here, and it's automatically routed it to bus 6 and 7. I don't know what bus 6 is. Let's see. Bus, the sidechain bus. I'm going to delete. Oh, it automatically created reverb and delay for me as well. I don't want that. Oh, it's so annoying. I'm going to delete the reverb and delay because I want to make my own. So now that I cleaned it up, all I have left is the Vocal Chops folder, which is my drum machine designer, is on that track. And this sidechain trigger sample that it created. And I'm going to take bus 6 off because I deleted that bus. So what I'm going to do is open my drum machine designer. So I can get there by clicking on my Vocal Chops folder and then opening the drum machine designer right here. And now you can see that it has nothing in it except for the sidechain trigger kit piece. So I don't really care about that. So let's go see what I did here. I picked some random vocal parts of my vocal and I'm just going to drag it into a slot here. So when I dragged it into an empty slot, it created this original vocal. I have a MIDI controller here. This is a Kai MPK Mini, fun times. And when I hit this F# 2 that it's mapped it to, it's going to make the sound, it's going to trigger the vocal chop. It's on one shot mode, so it's going to play the entire vocal audio file that I stuck in there. So actually the root key is set to C#3 here, but that's because it analyzed the vocal. The actual thing that's going to play is F# 2. So let's find F# 2.
But baby, you got me in my head.
Great. All I did was hit F# 2 on my keyboard. And it played it. Now, there's something to note about this. If I have original vocal selected, let's actually rename this. I can double click inside of the drum machine designer or on the track header to rename it. I'm going to call this Chop 1 to make it easier. So, if I have Chop 1 selected in my arrangement, I can transpose these notes. So I just hit C2. That's a lot. And then I can hit, this was C, I think this is C4. So it's fun that you can do that, but when I hit Vocal Chops, the folder, if I hit any note except for F# 2, it won't trigger anything. And you can see that when I hit these other notes, like when I hit C# 2, this C# 2 cell lights up. So basically what we're doing is we're mapping these across the keyboard. But when we have our individual chop or our individual cell selected, we can actually transpose it up and down the keyboard, which is cool. So I got Chop 1. If you're not familiar with Quick Sampler is the instrument that's running on all of the cells within your drum machine designer. And it's got it set up pretty cool so that when you drag it in, our Quick Sampler interface comes up. And it's basically a sampler that works with one sample, not like regular sampler in Logic, which works with multi-samples, which is a whole other video. But basically we've got this original vocal 3 audio file in there. And I renamed it to Chop 1. And cool, we've got it in there. So what I'm going to do is crop this to find a nice vowel. So I'm going to crop it to just be Babe. And I'm going to turn it to classic mode. The difference between one-shot mode and classic mode, slice mode makes multi-sample, maps different samples to different notes. That's really not convenient for Drum Machine Designer. I don't know why they have that as an option in there. I turned it to classic mode. The difference is one shot's gonna play my whole sample when I hit the note. So it's not gated, which means that like even if I take my hand off of the key, it's gonna keep playing the entire sample that I have cropped there. In classic mode, it only works when I have my key, my finger held down. So you see. So that's kind of cool. I like to have it on classic mode so that I can do stuff like this. Right? So that's cool. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna click retune. Now that I've cropped it to a specific section of the audio file that I dragged in, Logic can actually like listen to it and figure out what note it is. So when I press retune, you'll see that the root key here, it changed from C#2 to E3, which means that this specific section here that I played was an E3. And since we're in C major, that's perfect, because E is the third in C major. So let's keep that. The next thing I'm going to do is the same exact thing. I'm going to drag some more samples in and crop them the way I would like them to be cropped. So this one's actually pretty shaky. What I could do is tune it so that it doesn't have that bend in it. So let's actually do that just for shits and giggles. So that was So I'm going to go into Quick Sampler, and actually let's make sure this is the right note first. Before we do that, let's make sure this is the right note. So let's go back to our drum machine designer. And I'm going to click on it and do this again, retune. So it sees that as a C#3. So let's fix that. Let's start by transposing it. So what I can do, this is an important thing I forgot. So the input note here is representative of the note that's triggering that pad. So on my keyboard, that's a G2 here. The output note is representative of what note that sample actually is. So Logic has, just like your guitar tuner where it can tell what note you're playing on your guitar, Logic can analyze the pitch of it and figure out what key it is. So it's saying the output is C3. So I can easily transpose this to C, let's say we put it on C3 instead of C#3. Now it's going to be up a half step when it's triggered. And I can do, C1. But, that's not what we're going for here. So I'm going to go back to C3 and make it like that. So I'm hitting F and G, F2 and G2 on my keyboard to trigger these samples. So now, what I want to do is I want to tune this so it doesn't have as much vibrato. So what I'm going to do is Logic is nice enough to give us a pitch tool. Now, normally I would use auto-tune for this, but we're going so that it's more accessible. And now I get this ugly thing. I'm going to turn off C# and D just to make, because we want this to be a C. I'm going to turn my response to super fast. Maybe we'll crop it a little bit more just to make it not have that vibrato at the end. Yeah, and there you go. That's a nice... We tuned it so it doesn't have as much waver to it and as much pitch bend. Cool. Oh, wait, why did I close that? Okay, so now I'm going to drag the third one in. Oh, it's A2. Oh. Cool. So this is coming out as a D#3. Let's do this just to make sure that it is tuning it correctly because I did crop it. So recognizing it as A2 and it's outputting it as E3. I want this to be a C. I want this to be a G. Now I have this. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that they all have fade, a little bit of fade, so that there's no clicking from it cutting off not at zero crossing. I can do that here. Just putting a fade and a fade out here. I'll click on all of them and do that. I totally forgot to do that before. 0.005 seconds, but it's just going to help out with the little clicks that can happen. Cool, so I got these 3 vocal chops. These are not the same vocal chops that I created in the demo version, but they're going to work. As you can see, my point has been proven that sometimes you don't get the same ones. So now I have these 3 tracks here. So I'm going to click on vocal chops and just select them and color them the purple because I'm like that, and now it's all organized. So all I have to do now is play my vocal chops, and we've got the basis of our goal here, which is to do vocal chops. can see, we are now in the key, because what I did is I let Logic figure out what the note is, and I transposed it so that it was in the key of C. So I recorded one, cycle of the loop, so I'm going to go into the piano roll and just Q for quantize, and then I'm going to repeat this section using Command R so that it goes through our whole loop. So now this is what we have. So, as you can notice, another thing is that velocity matters in this. It's mapped to the volume in the quick sampler. So if you want something to be quieter while you're performing, you can change the velocity at which you hit the key and it will actually change the volume, which is really cool. So cool, we got our vocal chops. Now, just to go back to this, we don't have any MIDI regions in these three tracks here, these sub tracks of the Drum Machine Designer folder. These are triggering each one of these, but if we were to change, add a plugin to one of these, it would only affect the selected track, like the selected sound in our Drum Machine Designer. But if we were to add a effect to the vocal chops folder, then it would add the effect to all of the sounds. So just to make that clear. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add a compressor to it. I like to add a little soft distortion on my compressor here. With the vocal chops, I think it helps to compress it, just makes it crisper. And I'm going to turn auto gain off. I use the classic VCA because that's the one I usually go to. I'm going to crank the ratio. I'm going to crush it. Logic has a really cool tool which is called Vocal Transformer. It's a pretty old plugin, and basically the reason I'm using that is because it has a formant shifter built into it. This is something that I get mad at Ableton for because they don't have any sort of formant shifting plugin as a native plugin that comes with Ableton, but Logic does, and it actually works really well. So I'm going to go into pitch and choose Vocal Transformer from the dropdown, and this thing comes up, looks great. Logic always going great with updating their interfaces of their plugins, just kidding. So for this one, I think it'll sound better to turn the formant down, but you can play with it with this one. So here's it down by 4. And here's it up by 4. Cool, I like it at -3. I think now I made it too quiet, so I'm going to pull my makeup of my compressor up a little bit. Cool. The next thing I'm going to do is add some EQ. I want it to be a little bit filtered, and I want it to come through a bit more, so I'm going to boost like 2K also a little bit, or 3K-ish, like right here. And then I'm going to put a low pass filter on it. Just brought the resonance in the voice up so it comes through a little bit, like the nasal area of the frequency spectrum, so that's cool. And then if we go to my mixer, I already created here a hall reverb and a dotted quarter delay, which I'm running through the reverb. So I'm actually sending the delay to the reverb, but nothing's being sent to the delay or the reverb right now. So I'm going to go to the vocal chops folder, and I'm just going to send this to both bus 2 and bus 3, which are my delay and reverb. So let's give it a bunch of reverb and a little bit less delay. And here it is now. That's basically our vocal chops, man. That is the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and as I said, be sure to stream my new song, follow me on Spotify, Instagram, everything like that, which the links are down in the bottom thing. That's called the description. And I have tons more videos about Logic and production and stuff like that. If you're interested, make sure that you check it out, and I'll see you all in the next video. I hope you liked this, and remember that you can do tons more stuff than I did with this. Keep growing and expanding, and stay creative.